Okay, so welcome back. In this class, we'll continue to explain the nodes, especially the nodes that will be necessary for us to create our very first blueprint. And in this case, that's a simple door blueprint, okay? So the node that we should get to know is called the rotation node. What does this do? Well, it allows us to make a rotation of an object in our blueprint. So let's create a door just so we have a reference. And to do that, I'll just go down here and get a cube, just so we got it as a reference for now. We won't worry so much about the actual model of the door, because this is just a concept, okay? Just so we can explain how to do this. So I'll create an unscaled door for now and just adjust the dimensions a little bit. I didn't know if you are aware of this, but if you press the Alt plus the J key, it takes you to the top view, which is quite helpful just to quickly navigate between the different views. So let's scale the door a little bit here. Set it to 80. That looks good, I think. Maybe a little slimmer. And just until you get a size you're happy with. So around 2 meters tall is fine. And then Alt and G will take us back to perspective view. Cool. So here we have our door, okay? Now, you might recall the concept of the arrow before from the previous class. We can see that the pivot point at the moment is in the middle. So what does that mean? Well, it means that if I rotate it, it's going to rotate from the center pivot point. And that's not really what we want, is it? So you can either change the pivot, or as I like to do, you can change it using the arrow, okay? So the one that we looked at in a previous class, our reference vector. So let's add that in here and go down to the arrow type. So now there we have our arrow in our scene, our visual representative. So what we just need to do is place our door on the arrow. So arrow goes above the actual static mesh, the cube, just so it takes control. And let's just rename it to door. It's a bit easier, isn't it? So we have arrow above the door, and now we can move the arrow and the door to be in the correct position. Because once it's like this, it means it's going to rotate, but it's not aligned properly. So let's just click on the door and move the door to the right position of the arrow. Okay, so we want to make sure it lines up with where the hinge would be on the door. Just about there, wouldn't it? Okay, see that? So then we can position it wherever we want in our box, allowing our character to come into the box to cause that reaction within our collision box. So we just put it here at the end. Let's see how it looks. So basically this is what we have. So if it were in our project, then it would look just like this. Now, the only thing that would animate is actually the door moving in the rotational movement that we want. So it's important to remember that if you're using we have to set the door to be movable, just so it can actually move in the scene. Let's make our first node though. So far we've been looking at the theory of things, haven't we? Now we need to start to move things around. Now we don't need this anymore. We've already tested the begin overlap and the end overlap. So now we'll talk about the rotation node. So there are two types of nodes I can show you in the rotation. I'll show you what they are. Let me enable context sensitive as well so you can see them all. So remember that the concept we talked about in terms of variables, where we were able to use get and set, well, we'll be using set on this occasion. And that is a concept that allows us to set something in our scene. So what will we do? Well, we already have a physical element, don't we, which is our door. What we're going to do is we'll set a new rotation. So it has its own rotation element so that we can control. In this case, at position 0, 0, 0, we'll set up a new rotation to our object, okay? And that's why we call it set, because in effect, we're going to set the rotation. Okay, so if we type set rotation, look, there it is, set relative rotation. And what exactly does this mean, set relative rotation? Well, we're going to set up a new relative rotation to the door only. So let me select this. Here we can see that there are in the brackets, you can see it's referring to the door. And that refers to the door within our hierarchy. So Unreal is suggesting or trying to help us to understand which actor we want to use. Okay, so which actor is going to be compatible. So the one we want to run is the set relative rotation door. But since this is a case of learning, I'm going to disable the context sensitive. And you see now how it's all changed. You see what's happened here? It's just given us a generic set relative rotation, not specific to what we've already got set up in our hierarchy. So if we select it, we can just take a look at it, what it actually is. This here is a function type node, and it executes a function. Okay, the blue, as we looked at before, are function nodes. So here we have these two visible nodes here. There's the first node here, which is the target. What is the target in our blueprint? Well, it's the aim of who we're going to be rotating. Remember, we talked about who, when, and what. So this is our character, our actor, the one who will be rotated. And if we think about our workflow, who will rotate? Well, that's the actor, isn't it? The door or the arrow. So it's the arrow because the door is actually connected in the hierarchy. So who is the actor in our blueprint? It's the arrow. So I can just click and drag and select get. And then we've got that in our graph. I connect it to the rotation node. And what will happen is it's going to rotate. And our character or our target, which is the arrow, will start to rotate. So let me just delete this and enable context sensitive just to analyze what Unreal has suggested for us. So we're going to type in again, set relative rotation, and choose the one for arrow. And there we go. So it's already done it for us. So this is the process of creating the node and then turning the actor on. And it will be done automatically because it understands what we've got set up. So this is the difference between context sensitive. And we've got our rotation parameters here as well. So which new rotation do you want? Do you want to rotate on the X, the Y, or the Z? Well, down here we have some more advanced nodes. So what is all this about? Well, they'll ask for the destination. This is more often used in games or when you work within different levels. And we'll focus though, in our case, on these two nodes. This one is actually pretty simple. Here we have a relative node, and there's another node I'll show you, and we'll use it just for learning purposes. It's called world rotation node. And I'll show you the difference so we can learn it and understand it, okay? They're practically the same node, but there is a subtle difference. Now, the difference in this one is world, and the other is relative. Let me show you the difference and explain what I mean. So the detail that we should mention every time there's a node with a target is that Unreal will tell you what type of target it is. So in this case, the target is a scene component. As you can see, it says there, it's a component for our scene, for our blueprint. And I can't use something that's not in this category, right? It just won't work. So the target is a scene component. The arrow is a blueprint component. So it's all right. So I say that because at times, not here specifically, but you might try to make a reference or make references and try and do something, and it just won't work. And then you have to check if what you're doing is correct, or if you've done something wrong, or if Unreal doesn't have this node that you're trying to use. And as I told you about C++ in the past, it will give you more options. And here, this is basically what we have in blueprints. There are the known commands that are part of the engine. Okay, so now and again, what you're trying to do, maybe it just doesn't exist, and you will have to find or create or change your reasoning to try and get the desired effect. And sometimes that can be quite tricky. Okay, sometimes it may take a lot of work. So coming back to our door, we have our door here, and we're using our scene set to 0, 0, 0. If we adjust the rotation, it changes that angle for us on the z-axis. Okay, sorry, not on the door, on the arrow we need, don't we? So let's rotate that 90. There we go. So you notice it opens inwards, so I want to open it outwards. So our rotation angle should be -90. There we go. And let's go back here. So we've tested, this is just so we can understand it, we tested it and it should be -90. So we can put that in there and here too, because I'm just going to test both of them. And let's just drag this down a little bit. And this one here, connect this one first and let's see what happens. The last class we set up our collision, if you remember. Let me just check it's all set up properly. You see it? So it's going to ignore all items and will just accept the character's collision. Okay? So when the character overlaps this collision box, hopefully it should then rotate the arrow at the new -90 degree rotation. Okay? So let's compile and save and see if there are any issues. Let's play. So let's have a look. Okay. Right. So it opened, but it's not closing. So why not? Okay, well, what we'll have to do is we'll have to set that up so that when the character comes out of the collision box, then it closes. And this is what I mentioned in the Boolean variable concept class, if you remember. Maybe one of the solutions for us in this case would be to check if the door is open or closed and verify the fact whether it's open or closed. So let's just switch these up and see how world location works. Okay. So now it's open, but it's open a different way. Why did it do that? Why did it not just open with the same angle? Well, the answer, maybe you've already figured it out. What's happening here? Well, it's set up with a rotation related to the world. Okay? So it's a rotation related to the world, to the overall coordinates within our world. So within the overall coordinates of our scene, the -90 degree angle should be in this direction. So why is that? Because here our blueprint is rotated. Now, let me go back so you can see it. Let's walk by. And now it opened correctly. So that's because -90 degrees for this box represents this position. Okay? So that's the difference between the world and the relative and different nodes. So you may think, wow, so every time we have to make a blueprint, we have to set it up in that way, set it up with each door at 0 or 180 degrees. For every blueprint, you'll have to set up a position, or maybe the door is slightly open. Well, in order to avoid having to keep repeating yourself, you can work with the relative node. Let's just show you how to do that. So with the first option, we noticed it rotated the correct way, didn't it? So if we walk up to it, it's rotated correctly. It works with the position of the door. It was works pretty well. So this is important because maybe this is what you want to do. Maybe you want to walk up to the door and then it opens at that angle. Or maybe you can only use world rotation, perhaps. Well, no matter what position it's in, then you may decide to use relative rotation. But you might think, no, I want this to rotate at 90 degrees from its current position. Well, okay, so yeah, use relative position for that. And that will help you with rotating the door. Now let's do the opposite. Let's make it close. So how do we do that? Well, we can use the same node to make it open and to make it close. We use the relative node and push Control and W to create a copy for us. And now you can see that the arrow looks like this. So I can either use it like this with the two variables, or if I want, I can use the same variable and drag it in. You can connect the two. It's probably better visually this way, because Unreal is going to be doing exactly the same thing. So once the character exits the collision box, what do we want to happen? We want it to rotate to 0, don't we? From -90 to 0, where it used to be at the beginning. So let's see what happens. Let's go towards it. It opens, let's come out, and it closes. Open, closes. Okay, and that's it. They're the concepts that we wanted to show you today in this video. The differences between relative and world rotation nodes. And you may be thinking, well, this looks kind of abrupt, kind of ugly, right? It's not so smooth. I want it to be a smooth opening rather than just a sudden switching. And I would agree, because that's exactly what we want. So we can look at that detail in the next class. Okay, see you soon.